Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, September 22nd. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin with some breaking news. The FDA has just approved booster shots of Pfizer's COVID vaccine for seniors and others at high risk of infection. However, the CDC still needs to weigh in on who should get a third shot and when. Meanwhile, local doctors are urging San Diegans to get a vaccination, and it's not just for COVID. The concern is the upcoming flu season, and coupled with the pandemic, it's a frightening combination. As KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman tells us, they're urging you to get your shot by Halloween.
We learned last year that if you don't mix with a lot of other people, the flu has nowhere to go.
Last season, there weren't many influenza cases, credited to pandemic isolation and social distancing measures. But with many COVID-19 restrictions gone and people mixing again this year could be a different story.
The range of the seriousness is quite wide. And I really hope that we hit the lower end of seriousness, but the potential is quite large. And it's concerning because right now our hospitals are pretty close to capacity and there's no flu yet.
Dr. Heidi Meyer is a family physician for Kaiser Permanente. She's telling her patients to get the flu vaccine by the end of October to be ready for a potentially early influenza season.
This is the year to get it. And even if you think you don't need it personally, get it for the healthcare workers, get it for the hospitals that are overwhelmed still, that are working at 85 to 90% capacity. We don't want to get to the point where we are running out or out of beds.
Meyer says like coronavirus, age and underlying conditions can lead to bad outcomes with the flu.
The worry is that someone could get the Delta variant and they could also get infected with the seasonal flu that might not normally affect them severely, but if they get both at the same time, a young healthy person could die from the combination of both of those, whereas they would never die from one or the other.
She's also expecting an increase in coronavirus testing, as it can be hard to tell if it's just the flu or a mild case of COVID.
I would encourage people to get themselves tested, ideally about 72 hours after any symptoms start, isolate prior to testing, and then wait for that negative test before you go back out into the world.
Meyer is encouraging people with flu or COVID-like symptoms to mask up because it could save a life. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
With daily death counts now over 2,000, officials are continuing to sound the alarm on the devastating impact of the Delta variant in certain hotspots across the country. With only 54% of the U.S. population fully vaccinated, the question is now what happens next in this ongoing battle. Here's reporter Chris Nguyen.
As the White House tries to convince more Americans to get vaccinated against COVID-19, President Biden announced a new plan Wednesday to send 500 million additional doses to developing countries next year.
And we need to do our part. Governments, the private sector, civil society, leaders, philanthropists.
The total U.S. commitment now at 1.1 billion doses being donated to other nations.
This is an all-hands-on-deck crisis. And the good news is we know how to beat this pandemic. Vaccines, public health measures, and collective action.
But many wonder how long it will take for hospitals here at home to start feeling some relief. Doctors and nurses across the country are being pushed to the brink as they struggle to handle the latest surge in COVID-19 cases. Overwhelmed hospitals now rationing care due to limited ICU capacity.
As this disease spreads, right, it spreads throughout the entire community. It's more likely to catch those more vulnerable people when there's high numbers of unvaccinated there.
Nearly 90,000 people nationwide are hospitalized with the virus, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. More than 2,000 new deaths are being reported daily, the most since winter.
We are not out of the woods, and I fully expect case counts to go up again across the country over the weeks and months to come.
The Delta variant playing a key role in driving up the numbers. In Washington, Chris Wynn, KPBS News.
The pandemic has caused many parents to reconsider education options for their children. A new study by the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools reports a 7% increase in charter school enrollment across the U.S. in the last school year. KPBS education reporter MG Perez takes us to a San Diego charter school taking a lead in COVID safety and vaccination mandates.
Partners, which clock partner were we meeting with? 4 o'clock.
Urban Discovery School is the textbook example of a charter school. This charter is an independent, public, tuition-free school offering students more innovative and direct instruction so they can succeed. UDS has a downtown middle and high school campus, along with the K-5 campus, educating 600 students total.
COVID feels bigger than all of us.
Sean Loescher is the CEO responsible for leading the charter school along with its board of trustees. They've now voted to require all eligible students on campus, 12 and older, be vaccinated against COVID-19. It's the first public school system in San Diego County to do this.
When we look at the data and the science, we notice that students that are unvaccinated across San Diego County and Los Angeles County are much higher risk of getting COVID and being hospitalized for COVID.
Parents will have 60 days to comply and get both shots for their children. Perry Turnbull has 2 children in charter schools. Her youngest, 11-year-old Trevor, is in the 5th grade at UDS. He's learning from home right now because he's decided it's safer until he is eligible for a vaccine.
My biggest concern is that as a community, we're not operating together, really trying to get through this. I mean, this is a prime example where we can help our children understand that they can be part of the solution.
Tina Emmerich has 2 daughters in the UDS elementary school where she says they are thriving. She's ready to have them vaccinated when the time comes.
Because we know that vaccinations work. They're what's going to get us out of this pandemic, and it's going to help keep them protected since they're back in school and around more people than they have been in the last year and a half.
Urban Discovery Charter is all in when it comes to COVID safety. School administration officials are in contact with the county in hopes of turning both their campuses into vaccination sites sometime in the near future. That lesson could be coming soon to other school districts. MG Perez, KPBS News.
And for the latest on the pandemic and some resources, you can check out the Tracking COVID-19 section at kpbs.org, and you can get there by clicking the link on our homepage. Years of litigation between the family of Earl McNeil, National City, and the Sheriff's Department have finally come to a close. On Tuesday night, the National City Council approved a $300,000 settlement with the McNeil family. We get more on the years-long case from KPBS reporter John Carroll.
This story began in the early morning hours of May 26, 2018, when 40-year-old Earl McNeil showed up outside the headquarters of the National City Police Department. He said there was a warrant out for his arrest, that he wanted to turn himself in, and that he wanted to, quote, kill Jesus. Officers arrested McNeil, but he resisted and spat at them. They put him into a restraint device called the wrap, and they placed 2 spit hoods over his head and took him to jail. A nurse at the jail refused to have him booked. Court documents show a deputy at the jail placed a T-shirt over the spit hoods. Paramedics were called, and just before they arrived, McNeil stopped breathing. They were able to resuscitate him, but he never regained consciousness, and his family terminated life support about 2 weeks later. The county medical examiner determined McNeil died of brain damage caused by respiratory arrest. An autopsy showed he had meth in his system. In September 2018, District Attorney Summer Steffen decided no charges would be filed against any law enforcement officers involved in McNeil's death. In March 2019, McNeil's widow and other family members sued National City and its police chief, along with several officers and sheriff's deputies. They accused law enforcement of using excessive force and failing to provide critically needed medical care. In May of 2020, the National City Council voted unanimously to approve a $300,000 settlement, and all parties agreed to it just last month. Last night, the City Council voted unanimously to give final approval to the settlement, bringing to a close a years-long saga. A separate suit against the manufacturer of the restraint device is pending. John Carroll, KPBS News.
The Biden administration is ramping up removals and increasing the pace of repatriation flights to migrants under the Del Rio International Bridge in Texas. The Department of Homeland Security is releasing some Haitians into the United States, but it's unclear how many. DHS officials have emphasized that most migrants would be expelled or put in expedited removal proceedings. Meanwhile, in Haiti, a chaotic scene at the airport as migrants were flown back from the U.S.
We're going to be taking people back to Haiti, that we do it in a humane manner.
Haitian leaders here in San Diego say they're appalled at the treatment of migrants they've seen. KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel has more from a Haitian priest who says he's on his way to Del Rio to help in any way that he can.
Images of U.S. Customs Border Protection agents using aggressive tactics to deter Haitian migrants from crossing into Texas have circulated on the internet. Agents on horseback can be seen charging at migrants.
The Border Patrol use the horse to chase people, and it's disgusting.
John Elize Durandis, a pastor with the Haitian Ministry of San Diego, says he was appalled by the treatment the Haitians received in Del Rio.
Not like this in front of the camera. They don't care. They're not even hiding it.
In recent days, an estimated 12,000 undocumented Haitians have arrived to the border hoping to seek asylum. Durandis says Haiti is the last place these migrants want to return to. Following the assassination of the president and a massive earthquake, many have lost everything. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas condemned the tactics used by Border Patrol and says a full investigation is being followed.
That defies all of the values that we seek to instill.
Mayorkas says they're ramping up deportations of Haitian nationals. As of Tuesday, he says there are less than 10,000 migrants left at the Del Rio Bridge. In a Tuesday press conference, Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the Biden administration has failed to secure the border.
It's not the Biden administration catch and release policy. It's the arrest and jail policy, sending a message to these folks and anybody thinking about coming here.
Hoping to lend a hand, Durandis is on his way to Del Rio.
I'll be in Texas to see what we can do, how I can work with them.
Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
On the heels of the state of Texas enacting its anti-abortion law, Governor Gavin Newsom is demonstrating his support for reproductive rights. In a virtual ceremony today, Newsom signed reproductive health care legislation ensuring access to reproductive care. He was joined by legislative leaders and reproductive rights activists. The signing of the bill coincides with the launch of the California Future of Abortion Council. The coalition of justice organizations works to expand access to Californians and those from out of state in need of services here. The high heat is shining the spotlight once again on our drought conditions. Californians failed to significantly cut back on their water consumption in July after a plea by the governor. Rick Montanas is in Los Angeles and examines the crisis going forward.
The water flows freely for now.
If we're in a drought, I cut back no matter what.
Homeowner Chad Mack says if the drought gets worse, he's prepared. Learning from past droughts, he knows how to conserve.
A couple times a week rather than being abusive of the water supply. Besides, the more you use, the more you're going to pay.
Rate changes aren't here yet, neither are mandatory cutbacks. In July, Governor Gavin Newsom asked everyone statewide to voluntarily reduce water usage by 15%. A new conservation report shows big reductions in some northern areas and increases in our area. People along the northern coast cut back 17%. The Bay Area reduced by 8%, but people in LA County actually used 1% more.
The difference between what you see in some of the central and northern California areas versus Southern California is they're already in a governor-declared drought emergency.
SoCal isn't there yet. The Metropolitan Water District, which supplies water to 19 million people in Southern California, says a dry 2022 could bring an emergency declaration and mandatory reductions to the Southland. This drought map shows California is in severe, extreme, and exceptional drought. So MWD says conserve water now.
The fact is that every drop of water that we're able to save now is a drop of water that is available for us in storage to use if 2022 is dry again.
Water storage is another advantage SoCal is seeing over NorCal, where many reservoirs are critically low. Couple that with lower than average snowpack, drier winters, and hotter summers. Water officials say the need to conserve is critical.
Heat advisories are in effect for just one more day, and after that, we'll see temperatures on the decline. We're going to see a big-time drop-off, especially in the mountains, but overall, most of us are going to be cooling off here, and that's because of this wave of low pressure. It's going to be closing on in, bring the possibility of some showers and storms. Along with it, a little bit of an elevated wildfire risk too, because there's not going to be a ton of moisture with this system. For now, again, I mentioned heat advisories still in effect here from El Cajon out towards Ramona and Escondido. Again, all under heat advisories through later tonight. After that, those will be allowed to expire. Temperatures as we move into tonight dropping off into the low 60s in Oceanside, mid 70s for you in Borrego Springs, Mount Laguna, mid 60s for you for tonight. Tomorrow, a good bit of sunshine from Oceanside down towards San Diego. Chula Vista, a little bit more in the way of cloud cover as, again, some of that moisture is going to be working its way into the picture here. In Mount Laguna, you'll likely have a couple storms to dodge. Most of the wet weather will likely be confined to some of the mountains here over the next several days. Localized downpours possible, although I want to emphasize that the system is not very rich with moisture here. And with that, could see gusty winds. We could see a lot of clouds of ground lightning, and with that, the risk for new wildfires to spread. So it's something we're going to continue to follow very closely. Near the coast, temperature-wise, over the next 5 days, dropping out from the low 80s and upper 70s down into the mid 70s. Further inland, low 80s back down into the upper 70s. So again, not a whole lot of change from the coast to the inland regions, but in the mountains, we're going to fall into the low 60s there by Saturday. A few shower and storm chances Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend on Saturday. And in the desert, again, temperatures falling off from the triple digits into the upper 90s Friday, Saturday, and heading into Sunday. And it looks like we'll stay dry in the desert. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
An all-out effort is being made to stop yet another massive wildfire in California. It's threatening historic sequoias and closing legendary wilderness areas. Brittany Jacob has our report.
Engine after engine after engine continuing to fight the flames of the KNP Complex Fire, which has now led to the closure of all visitor services and attractions for all of Sequoia and Kings Canyon. The flames have scorched more than 25,000 acres in less than 2 weeks, charring trees and leaving parts of the historic park covered in a black landscape. Officials say the smoky conditions make it impossible to fly any helicopters or airplanes to attack the blaze today, but there is an upside to the haze.
The smoke keeps humidities up and it keeps temperatures down, so it kind of puts a lid on the fire, so the activity isn't intense. If that smoke cleared and we had blue sky, sun, and wind on the fire, that is a more challenge for the firefighters on the ground. The activity will pick up, but that also gives helicopters and airplanes a chance to get in the air and assist those folks on the ground. So it is a balance either way.
Officials say the fire intensity was reduced as it moved into areas where prescribed fire treatments were previously completed in the giant forest area. That proactive work has helped to protect the iconic sequoia trees.
If you have a landscape that's healthy and that's been treated over several decades, that fire behavior can be really intense, but once it meets that footprint of the prescribed burn, the behavior changes, the flame lengths drop down, and it gives firefighters a chance to really attack it and manage it much more easily.
Information Officer Mark Garrett tells me nearly 1,000 personnel from across the country are working this fire 24 hours a day. Their top priority is protecting lives and infrastructure, followed by the trees.
Folks are really happy to be here and be part of this fire just because we're protecting the iconic trees. So I think spirits are high, and we haven't lost any structures. We don't have any injuries. We don't have any sequoias that are burning. So all in all, I think we're looking pretty good.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Biden calls on world leaders to go big to get the globe vaccinated. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Residents of Hakumba Hot Springs have sued to block a 600-acre solar farm slated to be built next door. iNewsSource reporter Camille Von Canel explains the situation.
The lawsuit filed Monday claims the San Diego County Board of Supervisors violated environmental laws when it approved the project last month. Jeffrey Osborne owns the town's hotel and said he hopes the lawsuit will reduce the project's impacts on Hakumba.
We just feel like they completely ignored us. There's literally not one consideration in this project by the developer of this town. And so our only option at this point is to hope the courts do the right thing and defend our rights.
The developer has agreed to increase setbacks and provide $4 million in community benefits, but has refused demands to cut the project in half. Neither the county nor the developer wanted to comment on pending litigation. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource reporter Camille Von Canel.
iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. Facebook is under fire yet again. The Wall Street Journal reports the company knows just how toxic Instagram can be for young girls, and even though they know some features are harmful, they remain part of the social media's key makeup. Sunlin Sarfati has the story.
Madeline Taylor has grown up on Instagram, first creating her account in the 6th grade.
I was in a very sad kind of lonely place.
Her darkest moments of self-doubt over the last decade, she says, have all been triggered by what she sees on her feed.
I felt very isolated in my friend groups, and that was just totally perpetuated by Instagram. I would see all my other friends going and doing these really fun excursions with their other friend groups, and I was wondering why I wasn't doing any of that.
Those harmful feelings are exactly what Instagram already knows. According to company documents obtained by the Wall Street Journal, Facebook, the parent company of Instagram, spent the last 3 years trying to understand just how toxic Instagram is to young people. That internal research is damning, saying that comparisons on Instagram can change how young women view and describe themselves. Their researchers wrote, teens blame Instagram for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression. Finding that we make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls. And among teens who reported suicidal thoughts, 13% of British users and 6% of American users traced their desire to kill themselves to Instagram.
I would say 99% of the time, the patients who I meet with are reporting looking at idealized images and feeling horribly about themselves and using those images as a basis of comparison that really results in feeling like a failure often.
In the wake of these internal findings, Facebook is pushing back, calling the reporting deliberate mischaracterizations and conferred egregiously false motives to Facebook's leadership and employees. Adding that they believe the Wall Street Journal report cherry-picked selective quotes from individual pieces of leaked material in a way that presents complex and nuanced issues as if there is only ever one right answer. Instagram says it's looking at new ways to discourage users from focusing on their physical appearance and making it a positive space for all. But lawmakers on Capitol Hill say that is insufficient.
After this revelation, Mark Zuckerberg has to come back to Capitol Hill. He has to give answers.
And have demanded Facebook release their findings.
He has to explain why he knew about the dangers and yet continued his business practice.
In the past, Facebook has taken pains to downplay the negative impact on teens.
Mr. Zuckerberg, yes or no, do you agree too much time in front of screens, passively consuming content is harmful to children's mental health?
I don't think that the research is conclusive on that.
An assessment that lawmakers aren't buying.
We all knew that that was a hollow talking point back then when he said it. But obviously this internal research shows that he knew, or at least he should have known, that it was the exact opposite.
Lawmakers have given Zuckerberg 3 weeks to respond to a letter with a series of questions about this research. They expect he'll be back on Capitol Hill to testify about this. If you're one of the families expecting a September child tax credit, it's coming. The IRS says they're looking into why some have not received their installment expected by September 15th. The agency says it's distributed $15 billion in credits to about 35 million families last week. Eligible families can get up to $300 for each child up to the age of 6, and then $250 for each child between the ages of 6 and 17. You don't have to fork over a fortune for some good food in San Diego. The Michelin Guide agrees. Today, the Michelin Guide announced 45 restaurants across the state and 5 San Diego eateries made the grade for culinary excellence. They're being recognized with the Bib Gourmand designation, and that means that they offer good food at good prices. That would include a starter, a main course, dessert, and even a glass of wine for around $40 or less. Before taxes and tips, of course. The 5 local restaurants include Cali in the Gaslamp, Cesarina in Ocean Beach, Chicha Osteria in Barrio Logan, and Dija Mara in Oceanside, and Morning Glory in Little Italy. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.